What's up, everybody? As promised, I'm back for the on-water review of our 5 recreational open cockpit kayaks. So the first kayak I'm going to jump in is the Old Town Loon 106 Angler. Oh. And even though it's a small boat and I'm a fairly big guy, it's got plenty of room. Let me get this back adjusted up. Let me remember here. Oh yeah, on either side I've got these little red knobs. I just pull that forward. Nice. That's a really comfortable seat. And then if I want some more support under my legs, which I do, just ratchet that up. This thing's cozy. Cozy like a couch. I've actually spent a little bit of time in this boat. I did a river float in it a while back. And I was really impressed with just how comfortable it is, how easy it was to paddle. Not the fastest boat in the world because it is only 10'6", and I think it's 28, 29 inches wide. Check the stats for that to be sure, but fairly wide and bulbous. So it's not gonna be the fastest boat, but it's definitely comfortable. So let's just start off by talking about stability. This boat feels really, really stable. You know, if it had a flatter platform, I bet I could stand up in it. But when I'm leaning it over, I mean, I can't even get this thing to go. I'd have to grab the cockpit and flip it over. And this is me in 50-degree water. This is not water I would want to swim in right now, but I'm not worried about it whatsoever. I wasn't planning on this, but I mean, I want to show you guys how stable this thing is. Look at that. Totally comfortable. Again, this is 55-degree water. I would not want to swim in this today, but I don't even have to think about it. I'm not doing a headstand for you though. Not today. If I was to use this boat more in open water like this, I would definitely go for the longer boat. Longer boats just cut and track through the water so much better than a short boat like this. This boat, every time it hits a wave, it feels like it wants to puh, and slows it way down. God, I just can't get over how stable it is. But it is only 10'6", so it's not gonna be the fastest boat in the world. If you're lake touring, I definitely recommend checking out the 12-foot version. Longer boats are just always going to have better glide and better tracking. Now the beauty of a small boat is the maneuverability. So whenever you get a short boat, you get a boat that's more maneuverable. Again, for lake paddling, you don't really care so much, but if you're in a river or tighter areas, it's nice to have a boat you can just spin around. 2 strokes and I'm facing the other direction. I'm not sure what else to say about this thing. It's incredibly comfortable. It's incredibly stable. I think it's a good value for the money. I like the creature comforts, the features. I like being in this boat. My only thing is, I wish they would have sent me the 126. Next time when I hit them up, I will definitely ask for the longer version of it. But all in all, I'm a big fan. I like the Old Town Loon a lot. Let's go swap it out and check out that Sorrento, which is kind of the little less expensive version. Let's see if that really makes a difference on the water. All right, so next we have the Sorrento. Get my foot pedals adjusted here. You know, those foot pedals will feel pretty solid once they're locked in. They don't feel like they have a lot of play. Just that little adjustment that I kind of dinged it for, but they feel really good. The first thing I notice about this boat compared to that Loon is the cockpit. It feels like it's hitting me on the outside of the kneecaps and it's just way harder versus that one had this big, flat, comfy, cushy pads. Those are things on the internet that you wouldn't notice, but when you get in the boat, it's significantly different. This is much less comfortable than the Loon is. That's the first thing I noticed. The other thing I noticed is the seat adjustment. Although it has a similar adjustment, it has those straps as opposed to the ratchets, so it feels like it kind of wants to kick up a little weird. It's a little more challenging to get it straight or get it to lock in. Yeah, backrest is plenty comfortable. I think it has the exact same backrest, just that under thigh adjustment. Yeah, boat definitely has some nice glide to it. We've got a little bit of wind and a little bit of chop on the lake today. Not a bunch, but a little bit. I noticed myself having to paddle a little harder on the right side, or if I stop paddling, look at how quick that boat wants to turn into the wind. That's why they put a skag on it right there. So if I put that skag down, in theory, that should lock in the boat and allow my boat to start turning downwind. And again, it's adjustable. I can have it all the way up, I can have it all the way down, or right now I have it kind of in the middle, so I can have it in between. And that feels just right. Stability-wise, it feels plenty stable. As we go through our demo day today, it's getting a little bit more choppy with every boat. So it's kind of fun to get this thing in a little bit of conditions and see how it does. Definitely needs that skag. I've found if I have that skag up in any of these conditions, it just wants to whoo. So that same rocker I was telling you about that makes the boat maneuverable, also kind of is a pain in the butt. But with that skag down, I dropped that thing down, and now I can run with these little wind waves, really nice. It's kind of fun when you get to just ride, it like pushes you along, free rides. Woo! Getting some water on me, that's fun. So I'm going to compare this boat to another boat that I've reviewed in the past called the Dagger Axis 12. It's similar in the fact that it has that retractable skag. It's more kind of recreational, high volume. The difference is that Dagger has a more ergonomic cockpit that allows me to feel like I'm a lot more connected to the boat. This one has a similar feel and kind of reminds me of that boat, but the ergonomics for me just don't really work. I don't know whether to put my legs underneath here, which then I don't have padding and it's kind of like real splayed out. But if I put them up here, it's kind of hitting me in the outside of the kneecap and there's not enough padding. So, gosh, I think for the money, I would probably go with the Old Town Loon if you're looking for something more recreational, or check out that Dagger Axis if you're looking for something more performance oriented. So let's hop out of this and let's go jump in that Liquidlogic Saluda next. Oh, somebody real short was in here last. There we go. You know, it's interesting, this boat compared to the last one, the Sorrento, this one feels a lot tighter and it hits me on the outside of my legs as opposed to kind of being on top of the legs. I'm also in the higher position of it, but yeah, it feels like I'm way more in a cockpit as opposed to being so deep inside. So may lend itself better to a smaller paddler. If you like that feeling of a boat being up and around you, this feels more like a low profile kayak as opposed to kind of that high volume Sorrento I was in, or even the Loon felt a little more high volume. This one has really nice tracking and glide too. I don't notice this one wanting to wander or like turn into the wind like that Sorrento. Yeah, it's really good. It just keeps on track. Now we'll take it downwind a little bit and see how it does. Again, this is where you feel the waves kind of pick you up and push you. It's ever so slightly. I mean, it's not very wavy today, but a little bit. Yeah, it feels like it has a nice keel, easy tracking. It also feels a little faster. I think that narrower, lower profile helps the boat to feel like it cuts through the water a little bit more. It doesn't plow quite as much as those other two Old Towns I was just in. I feel like for the same amount of effort, I'm going maybe a knot faster, mile an hour faster. Yeah, if I was to compare this to like the Loon felt very comfortable, like a big cozy couch. This one feels a little bit more performance-y, a little bit more sporty, fun to paddle. I mean, it's not a performance kayak by any means, but it just feels like a little more zippy. I don't know how else to describe it. The other thing to talk about is the seat. This one has a frame chair. It still hits me kind of in the middle of the back. I was still able to rotate, so that wasn't too much of a problem. So I've reviewed this boat once before and I gave it like a real thorough breakdown, and I kind of stand behind my original review. It's a nice paddling little boat. Definitely a good value for the money. Doesn't feel quite as burly or refined as that Loon does. If I had that Loon 120 versus this, I don't know. I would have to really put them both side by side and see how much faster that 120 felt, because I've really felt comfortable in that Loon, and the overall ergonomics felt a little bit nicer. All right, let's jump in. What do we got next? We got the Pungo 120, the quintessential recreational kayak. More Pungos have sold than grains of rice, they tell me. That's not true at all, but there's been a lot of Pungos sold. 49 pounds, they say. I just pulled that one out, and that's supposed to be a few pounds more. We gotta weigh these things. They're just not even close. All right, so look at that cockpit. Even though it's a 4-foot long cockpit, it's actually no different than just a regular kind of recreational sit inside, because my shins still hit this dash. So if you really want to take advantage of the open cockpit in this boat, you really need to take the dash off. Whereas both the Loon and the Saluda, I still had quite a bit more room in front of me. You got so many things on this boat. Adjust that up a little. Oh, that's nice. That is a pretty comfy seat. Pretty comfy. Similar to that Old Town, but it just feels really comfy. The footrests feel really comfortable. I like how they're angled back. That's nice. It's a nice touch. Ooh. That turn down bow feels funny. It feels like it's going down into the water. I know it's not, but it just has a weird feel. Well, first thing I could say about the Pungo is the ergonomics feel really, really nice. The padding, the foot pedals, everything just feels cozy. I would say on par with the Loon. The backrest on the Loon might have been a touch more comfortable, but still really, really cozy. As far as speed, it feels more along the lines of the Saluda 12. I feel like the Saluda felt like lower profile, whereas this one feels a little bit more bulbous and round. And they make this in 3 sizes. They make a 140, they make a 120, and then they make an even smaller one. So you can kind of find the size that works best for you. Stability feels really stable. It's got that same kind of V bottom like the Old Town. I would think the Loon felt like it had a better secondary stability. Honestly, maybe even the Saluda, they both feel really stable, but the Saluda 2 may have felt a little bit more primary stability. Gosh, when I talk about primary and secondary, I hope that's not confusing, but that means that a boat wants to like weeble wobble, but then it settles down on the secondary stability. So primary just means like how much tippiness does a boat have versus how much does it want to settle in. So the secondary on this boat's really good, but the primary felt a little bit lighter than the Loon and the Saluda. I think if I was to sum this boat up, I would say it's kind of like the Loon comfort and the Saluda speed. So it's kind of the best of both worlds there. The fit and finish feel really nice. The quality of the boat is definitely noticeably better. I could see why it's the most expensive boat of the polyethylene kayaks we're testing out today. I just can't help but wonder what that Loon 120 would feel like. I got to get my hands on one of those someday. Because I might, you know, they might be like apples and apples. That would be really close. This is the first boat that I've ever paddled. The Loon's the first boat I've ever paddled that compares to the Pungo in comfort. And my other review of this boat, it's kind of stood out as like the most comfortable, cozy couch of a kayak. So we came back into this calm water to test this one out. But I really want to know how it compares to the other 3 boats when I get out into the wind and chop. So let's head out to the waves and see how that downward bow does. So this is a pretty typical lake that you would find yourself on. I mean, there's lots of recreational kayaks like this out here. So it's good to get it out in the waves to see, okay, if we get a little bit of chop, are there waves breaking over the bow of this thing? Like, look at that. That's like 6 inches of chop and the waves start breaking. Versus a boat that has a little bit more rocker is going to want to rise up through the water. Like that Sorrento, I went out there in even bigger waves and I never took a wave over the bow. Let's get it out in the big stuff. Big stuff. It's a little bouncier out here. You know, I think that's a pretty good test. Did waves break on the bow? A little bit. Would I dock this boat for that? Not at all. Because this is a flat water recreational boat. You would be using it on a lake like this. But I think if the wind was to pick up much more than this, you're probably getting off the water anyway if you're in an open cockpit recreational kayak. So I'd give the Pungo 2 thumbs up. I really like this boat. It's comfortable, it's fast, it's easy to maneuver, kind of behaves well and does what you would expect it. Not the biggest primary stability, which I can't believe I'm even saying that, because for the longest time the Pungo was considered like the most stable thing, but boats are getting more stable. On the flip side of that, I would say so far it has the best performance out of the boats that I've been in. Mixture between stability and maneuverability. It's definitely a nice little boat. But let's go ahead and head back and jump in the Eddyline Sandpiper 130 and see how that compares to these others that we've tried. All right, the Sandpiper 130. This is like the Cadillac of all the kayaks I've been in today. You sit up a little higher, but it still feels deep. It feels roomy. It feels refined. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like we've been paddling Toyota Corollas and Camrys and comparing those to like a Hyundai, and then you get into a Mercedes and you're like, oh dang, this thing feels different. Cockpit size is huge. You don't have a dashboard on this one, which, you know, it'd be kind of cool if they made some sort of a dash that went on it, but definitely has a big roomy cockpit. I mentioned earlier the seat feels elevated up a little bit, so my feet are below my hips. Feels really comfy that way. Feels plenty stable. I would say, what would I relate it to? I would say it's similar to the Pungo, where the initial stability, maybe it's a little better than the Pungo. The secondary, maybe a little less, but it still feels really stable. I know some people have gotten in this boat and feel a little top heavy. I think if you're on the upper end of the capacity, you might feel it's a little bit twitchy, but for me at 220 pounds, it feels like rock solid stable. And yesterday I was paddling, I had my golden retriever who's 120 pounds in my lap, and we had no problems whatsoever, besides having to paddle over his fat butt. So it's important for me now to disclose the fact that Eddyline is a sponsor of this video. They sponsored the channel for 2022, which I'm super grateful for. That means I have access to all their products and can mix them into all my reviews I'm doing, which is exciting because honestly, they're one of my favorite brands. Way before Eddyline ever sponsored this channel, I was using their boats. I mean, I've been working with Eddyline for probably 15 years as a dealer, as an outfitter. So I've always been a fan of their boats. I feel like I'm part of the Eddyline family. So I'm really excited to be working with them a little closer. I'm a fan of their boats, and I definitely think if you paddle them, they speak for themselves. I also want to be as honest as I can, because this boat is, what is that, $650 more than the Pungo I was just in? And is it really $650 better? Well, I think the overall fit and finish is substantially better. The glide of the thermoform boat on the water versus the polyethylene, it is noticeable, you guys. I mean, if you get in both side by side, it just has a different overall feel to it. The efficiency of a boat like this, it is a foot longer, so you would expect longer boats equal better efficiency, better tracking. So no surprise there. But even so, the amount of effort I have to put in to glide in this boat, it's just a different level. This kayak kind of bridges that gap between recreational and touring. I can fit enough camping gear in here for a nice weekend trip, but I can also keep up with longer, faster boats. Sometimes when you get a longer boat, it makes it a little bit more tricky to turn it around, but this boat actually maneuvers pretty well. Even with all that keel and that deep V bottom, with just a few strokes, I can get it spun around. Now I think we need to take it out in the chop and see how it does in that bouncy water. That's a pretty dry bow, I don't know. I like that. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like a boat should have a raked bow. And maybe it's my sea kayak background that I just feel more comfortable with it. Anyway, it's a much drier ride. It feels more buoyant, like it just wants to ride up and over the waves. So it might be worth noting that this boat comes in two sizes, and I'm in the larger size of the two. If I was in the 120, I'd be sitting pretty low in the water. I've paddled it before, but I'm definitely kind of at the Eddyline logo. The 130 does a better job supporting my weight. And especially in chop like this, I'd rather be in the bigger boat, not having waves come over the bow. At some point, I'd like to get both on the water and review them side by side to give you guys a little feedback. But this thing's handling great. No problems going straight through the waves, tracking. It's not wanting to get blown around. And so far, no waves over the bow either. Yeah. All right, we're gonna take this one back in and then we'll do a little wrap up. We'll talk about all the boats side by side, what boat's right for who, and which boat I found to be the most comfortable. So I wanted to wrap it up with all 5 boats side by side, and there's 3 things that sort of stood out to me, and that is comfort being one, speed and efficiency, and then overall value for what you're buying. So let's just talk about the Old Town Loon to start. Out of all the boats I was in today, this thing felt the most comfortable. But comfort isn't always the number one thing, because comfort at the cost of performance isn't really that great. So it was the most comfortable, but it also felt the slowest and pudgiest on the water. Overall value, I think it was pretty good for the price. It definitely is a well-built, well-made, well-appointed boat. I just would like to try the longer one. So next time, I'm gonna get the longer one and I'll tell you guys what I think. The Sorrento, on the other hand, was probably the least comfortable and probably the least value. Even though it was cheaper, I just didn't really feel like you were getting what you paid for. Like, they cut a few corners and the overall boat just wasn't as comfortable to be in. And even though it had a skag, I just was left feeling like, I don't think I would spend $1,000 on that particular boat or recommend it to a friend. Whereas the Loon, I would. The Saluda was kind of like right in the middle on all 3 of the factors. I felt like it was a good value, being less expensive than the Pungo, less expensive than the Loon. Performance-wise, it fit really well and it paddled well, it tracked well, it felt fast, it had good glide. The overall value, it didn't feel as high-end as the Pungo or the Loon, but it did everything I would expect it to do. It did everything I asked it to do. So it kind of fits right in the middle for me out of the 5 boats that I tested. The Pungo was a great boat. I feel like it fits a large variety of people. The overall fit and finish was really good. So I feel like it's a high value thing at $1,200, $1,219. Definitely you get what you pay for. And I was a fan of the comfort and the value and the performance. It kind of ticked all 3 boxes for me. Again, I'm a fan of this boat. This is the second time I reviewed it and I stand behind my initial review. It is a lot of boat for the money, and I think it's worth spending a little bit more. If you're gonna spend a lot of time kayaking, you're definitely going to enjoy the Pungo. The last boat in our line, and the most expensive boat in our line, was the Eddyline Sandpiper 130. And as far as performance goes, it was definitely the top out of the 5. It felt the fastest, it felt the most seaworthy, the best tracking. Comfort was up there as well. I liked the higher seating position. The only boat I found to be more comfortable was the Loon, but the performance was so much better that it more than equaled itself out. The value of this boat I also feel like was really high. It is the most expensive, but It's still under 2,000 bucks, which I feel like is pretty good for a thermoform boat. You know, this is a boat that you're gonna be able to pick up, lift on your car. You're gonna be able to move around, handle, and deal with a lot easier than the polyethylene counterparts. It also feels significantly different on the water. There's something there that I can't quantify through words that really you owe it to yourself to paddle it and see for yourself. So thanks so much for hanging out and playing with kayaks with me today. I had a ton of fun. I've been wanting to do this review forever. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, click the notifications button, and leave us a comment below. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time, you guys, this is Dan wishing you happy paddling. We'll see you on the next one.